chapter. The Pharisees went and plotted to entrap Jesus in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with truth, and show deference to no one. For you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used for the tax." And they brought him a denarius. Then he said to them, "Whose head is this and whose title?" They answered, "The emperor's." Then he said to them, "Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." When they heard this, they were amazed, and they left him and went away. The Gospel of the Lord. Choices. We like to have choices. Choices give us a sense of control or power over the situation in which we find ourselves. Being forced to have a particular thing and only that one thing makes us nervous. Sometimes because we think there must be something else that we could have. Sometimes the choices are so overwhelming. Nevertheless, we get really excited about having choices. When you want a child to eat vegetables, perhaps you don't say, "Would you like vegetables?" but you say something like, "Would you like carrots or green beans?" And giving them a choice, and they have some control over that, but nevertheless, they feel empowered. Who's crying over there? Sorry, I hope nobody's getting hurt. Right? So we have choices we get to make, right? What do we want? This or that? I remember getting to a certain level in school when we had some options about what kind of classes to take. I think the big deal was we were going to take Spanish or French, but nevertheless, it wasn't dictated to you. As we get older, we want those kind of options for us. We want options on our cars. We want options on our houses. We want options, something to pick. We like our democratic process to some degree because we have choices. We can vote for A or B. And if you look at the League of Women Voters Guides, C, D, E, and F as well. Did you know there's all these crazy parties in the state of Michigan that I didn't even know about until you read that guide? I think the Workers' World is the one I vote with. I don't know, Tom, maybe that's the one for you. Choice. And then we come to our relationship with God, and somehow we sort of have this feeling that we have choices. There was a song that said, "I have decided to follow Jesus," as if we get to choose whether we're going to be part of Jesus' team or not. When you read the scriptures, though, it appears that's not really an option. The choice doesn't generally seem to be ours. It seems to be God who is doing the choosing. God who is calling us. God is calling someone. My guess is that if God had said to Moses, "Would you like to go to Egypt to do this?" and well, he did actually, and Moses kept trying to find excuses, but God had chosen him. And so he was the one who was going to Egypt. He chose David to be the king. He chose this whole series of prophets to speak God's word. And they weren't always happy people about having been chosen to do that. In fact, God is so intent on choosing people that sometimes he even chooses people who don't have a clue that they were chosen by God. Take Cyrus, for example. Cyrus is the king of Persia. He is a powerful leader of an empire. And he has, at this point, just defeated the Babylonians, who, remember, 670 years before had captured the Israelites and taken them off into captivity. Now Cyrus has come along, he has a different policy. He doesn't really want people in captivity in his own country. He wants to send them home so they can send in taxes. And so Cyrus liberates the Israelites from Babylon and sends them back to Jerusalem. Now, Cyrus has worked on this plot. He has worked on this plan. He knows all the pieces of it. But what Cyrus doesn't know is that he's acting as an instrument of God. That God is the one who is utilizing Cyrus to take care of the problem that God's people had. If someone were to come to Cyrus and say, "Well, that was good work on God's part," Cyrus would have said, "God, I'm a powerful king. I don't need God. to do this. And yet, Isaiah recognizes quite clearly that God, in fact, is the one who has been guiding Cyrus to execute this plan on God's behalf. The Thessalonians, who are new to this Christian faith, may have thought that they chose to leave those idols that they had once worshipped, the pagan gods with whom they had connected themselves. But Paul says to them quite clearly, no, God chose you to be part of his community. God set you apart to be part of the family. I say it's not very nice of God, is it, to do that? God should give us some options here. God shouldn't just force himself upon us. Well, it isn't really forcing himself upon us. It's simply recognizing what we already are. And that is people who bear the image of God in ourselves. Remember way back in the creation story, when God creates humanity, it says that God created male and female. In the image of God, God created them. And it appears that God believes, because his image is upon us, because we are marked with his image, because we are icons of the presence of God in the world, that God doesn't really need to ask our permission to work with us. That God feels as if God can simply just choose us, call us, select us, move us, work with us, put us into practice to make God's reality happen in our world. Jesus, confronted by the Pharisees and the Herodians about paying taxes or not paying taxes, moves along from there, but then basically says, give to God the things that bear God's image, namely us. That our lives are reflective of the nature of God. And if you want to see what that fully looks like, look to the work of Jesus, who is God in flesh, God in full form, God embodied in human life. And in his work and in his actions and in his service to others, we see what God is all about. Now God is out there doing God's thing. So my friend, God chooses us. Chooses us for the tasks that he needs us to do in the world, for the work to which he has called us. God empowers us with the Spirit that he places in us in the waters of holy baptism, so we're constantly aware of God's presence in us and through us. God sends us forth to bear witness, to be icons of God, to show the character of God in all that we do. And sometimes we'll do things and only afterwards will we say, aha, that was God at work through me. I know in my own work, which obviously you say, well, that's, of course you got God work, but there are times when I make a decision to go visit someone or call someone or do this or do that, and then something happens afterwards that says to me, boy, am I glad I went by. Something happens that would have not been possible if I had not gone at that very moment. And I'm convinced that God chose me to do that particular thing to make this happen. So we may have lots of choices, lots of decisions that we get to make in our human life, and I'm glad we do. But when it comes to God, God chooses us, and we respond by living his life